Our next speaker coming up is Violet Ford. She's a lawyer at the Ford Law Office and a PhD candidate at the University of Lapland. Ms. Ford is the first Canadian woman of Newfoundland and Labrador Aboriginal descent and Inuit ancestry to become a lawyer. Woohoo! In 2012, she received the National Aboriginal Achievement Award for her outstanding contributions in the field of law and justice.
Nakomingai, George and Solon and Victor. Ilingai. Ilingai is a word that normally in our community in Labrador, where I'm from, in the Nunatsiavut region, it was a very affectionate word that had multiple meanings depending on the mood of the person in the village, and it always made children feel much better. So, ilingai, everybody. And everybody is supposed to say, ah. Nakomingai. This presentation is on the Inukshuk and possible responses to its appropriation. And first I'm going to be showing a video of the Inukshuk discussed by a very respected Inuit leader in Nunavut.
My name is Peter Inukshuk. I'm an Inuit cultural activist. I am an Inukshuk builder, as you can see around here. I've been building Inukshuk within my Inuit homelands for many, many years now, for over 40 years. I grew up with Inukshuk. Inukshuk are landmarkers. Inukshuk tell Inuit from other parts of Inuit homelands they are survival. They are for survival. Inukshuk are normally built around good hunting places. Inukshuk are normally built around seal hunting places, fishing places, and good caribou hunting places. So Inukshuk are extremely important for survival for Inuit. Inukshuk are built like on top of rocks on top of each other. They can be anywhere from 1 meter to 2 meters. I've seen Inukshuk over 2 meters, and I've built Inukshuk to mark my way. Inukshuk have played an extremely important role for Inuit travelers from thousands and thousands of years ago. More recently, people have been building Inukshuk. It's not an Inukshuk, it's Inukshuk, which means it's a formation with a head, with arms, and with legs. That is not called Inukshuk. That is called Inukshuk, which means imitation of a person, imitation of an Inuk, or pretend person. So we cannot call, as Inuit, the one with head, arms, and legs Inukshuk, because it is not. Inukshuk have a great deal of importance to Inuit. There are survivors. There are lifeline. They play a great deal of symbol and guidance to Inuit since thousands of years ago. This particular Inukshuk has a window. That's the one I was talking about. If you look through the window one way, you might see a good fishing place, or a good caribou hunting place, or a good seal hunting place. So all the Inukshuks that we make, every one of them have meanings. Inukshuk is a little different one from the others. It has no window. It's mostly pile of rocks. It's just a land marker. It's just a marker on the land telling us Inuit or telling others that there were Inuit that lived here before. So it's important to Inuit because it tells us that Inuit have been here many, many thousands of years ago also.
Okay, it's enough of that. I'm getting homesick. So, I don't claim to be an expert in this area, and I have not done my PhD work in this area. I'm just a little girl in love with a boy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just a person from Labrador who believes strongly in culture and the advancement of our Inuit culture in a time of global change and globalization on our own Inuit communities. Referring back to Marx's political theory, and here I thought I'd throw this in to sound more academic and more sophisticated, so I thought I'd use this quote. Marx's political theory defines commodification as the process by which something which does not have an economic value is assigned a value, and hence how market values can replace social values. It describes a modification of relationships formerly untainted by commerce into commercial relationships in everyday use. And that is our fear, that the Inukshuk will become just a marketable instrument to sell their products. And because I'm a lawyer, and I'm an Inuk lawyer, I believe I have the right to use the Inukshuk for market value. And so that's the type of dichotomies and that we as Inuit find ourselves in. In this context, it has been said many times in Indigenous discussions that the commodification of our cultural symbols is a new form of colonialism, or put it another way, the last frontier to be discovered. The Inukshuk symbol has been commodified so much so that the value of the symbol has altered from that of value to Inuit to that of corporations. It could also be said that the relationship to the Inukshuk has expanded to not only between Inuit and the Inukshuk, but also to the public at large through this commodification. The Vancouver 2010 Olympics is well known, and the figure that has been used by the Vancouver Olympics to promote the event and to promote the souvenirs that they were selling in Vancouver. This appropriation by the Olympic Committee occurred without the free and prior informed consent of Inuit communities. This use was appropriated in violation of Inuit customary laws surrounding the use and purpose of this figure. The views by Inuit elders in this example included such quotes as, "Inuit don't build Inukshuk indiscriminately. All Inuit are told not to make any Inukshuk without a purpose." Inuit elders strongly stated that the design was not authentic, and as you can see this in the video as well. Despite this appropriation, the Inuit positioned themselves in response to this example by ensuring that some benefits would be received, presenting their culture at the Olympics Pavilion through cultural performances such as drum dancing and throat singing. They entitled this performance "The People Behind the Inukshuk." As such, it was seen by Inuit that this was an opportunity for Inuit to promote their culture and identity on the larger Canadian and world stage. In other words, they seized the moment. Some 1,200 Inuit carvers were conscripted to make authentic Inukshuk for sale at the Olympics. This appropriation created other opportunities for further appropriation of the Inukshuk. Much of this appropriation has been triggered by many companies which are using this symbol on their products, and as such, it could be said that this has created an Inukshuk boom, or another word I have seen used in Inukshuk, and has become a Canadian symbol. Anyone can now buy plastic versions of the Inukshuk at top sellers like Canadian Tire, as well as Touchstone sites. There have also been uses that create negative images as a way for companies to sell their products. In other words, offensive uses and misappropriation of the Inukshuk. You can see there, by the drug companies, panic attacks, bedwetting, and erectile dysfunction, although I would say the one on the right doesn't have a problem with erectile dysfunction. It was pretty strong to me. Those were used, I am sure, without permission from Inuit elders. We can discuss responses to these appropriations through related emerging norms, or that's just another sophisticated word. We in Inuit communities would say it's a way of doing things. Emerging norms is another word to mean a way of doing things, a way of instructing or defining behaviors. This form of colonialism can only be corrected through reconciliation and by providing the Indigenous perspective into the responses to protect and care for the proper application and use of this cultural symbol. These steps towards reconciliation can be defined and informed by emerging norms, including the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and in a Canadian context through Section 35 of Canada's Constitution. Beginning with the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Article 3 of this declaration states that Indigenous peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. The appropriation of the Inukshuk affects Inuits' right to self-determination as it relates to their right to freely determine and pursue their economies, their social and cultural development, as seen in this presentation. The Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People reflects the customary norms of international law. The rights to self-determination cannot be recognized and become a living instrument without recognition of the other related provisions, including Article 11, which provides that Indigenous peoples have the right to practice and revitalize their cultural traditions and customs. This includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures such as archaeological and historical sites, artifacts. Paragraph 2 provides ability for redress through effective mechanisms with respect to their cultural, intellectual, religious, and spiritual property, which has been taken without their free and prior informed consent. In addition, Article 31 strengthens the Inuit position, which provides that Indigenous peoples have the right to protect and develop their cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and cultural expressions. And in conjunction with Indigenous peoples, states shall take effective measures to recognize and protect the exercise of these rights. To wrap up, briefly responding to Section 35, rights in an Inuit context. Inuit responses to colonialism in the Arctic, as seen through their land claims agreements, ensures that their rights are protected. Inuit have been taking great strides to ensure their rights to pursue their economies and their political development through this process. The application of Inuit customary laws is a component of these rights. The Supreme Court of Canada has recognized customary laws, and these laws can be used to protect and care for these cultural symbols. Inuit customary laws reflect Inuit values, Inuit beliefs, their worldview, and their perspectives. And they are already applied in such processes under Nunavut government's policy on the use of Inuit knowledge. Because I have to wrap up, I just want to conclude that much work is required on Inuit oral history so that Inuit customary laws are presented from an Inuit perspective. And is probably the most important response in order that adequate responses reflect the cultural values and that reconciliation is truly established. And these customary laws have to be applied on Inuit terms. The decision to apply customary laws will be made by those communities whose traditional knowledge is misused. Only when these steps are taken will reconciliation be complete and the colonization of traditional knowledge and cultural expressions stop. I thank you for this opportunity, Solon, George, and others, to give us as Inuit our voice in this important work that is being undertaken by IPinCH, and not only for the present, but also so that this work can advance to protect future generations Inuit's ownership and cultural identity. Nakaming.